Hello and welcome to the Empowered Couples Podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about how to be more self-aware to break patterns that affect your marriage.
And specifically, your patterns. This is going to be very much a episode to listen to and challenge yourself and really be looking in the mirror. And we would hope that you both listen to this episode. So send this to your partner right now and say, babe, let's both hear this. Let's both reflect on our parts and then we'll talk about it.
Which is different than you sending, when people, right, in general, send a reel or a podcast to their partner and say, you need to listen to this for yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, from this title, send it to each other. Like, hey, it's such a good way that you put it. Let's both consider, how we each can do better from these points that they make.
Exactly. So here's the thing to get first. We do not marry a perfect person. That means your partner is not perfect, nor are you. And we need to accept this fact because it might seem common sense, but we lose sight of this and we really can start to hold each other to these high standards, sometimes that we're not even holding ourselves to. Sometimes we're harder on our partner than we're even being on ourselves, if we get really honest. And so we need to remember that although our partner has strengths, that's what drew you to them. That's why you chose them to be the person you build a life with. But they also have, just to categorize them, flaws, which we don't really see them as flaws, but we just have to call them something. It could be triggers. It could be fears. It could be sensitivities from their past. It can be the beliefs that they picked up from their parents and what they witnessed or past events that were hurtful. And so our partner comes to the relationship with, yes, those strengths, but also some of those quote unquote weaknesses or flaws that we're going to need to work through as a team. And ultimately, if you take our advice, because we're going to get into, after we give you some context and some mindset stuff, some tangible steps to focus on, if you do these, then your interactions, even in the hard moments, will help each other heal and evolve rather than hurt and devolve and become worse versions of yourselves. That's really what this is ultimately about. What kind of a partnership are you going to have? The kind of partnership that has both of you become better and better versions of yourselves, and you work through things and you heal and evolve, or that you make each other worse, that you hurt each other. That is, I know, why you're listening to this.
Yeah, and also, it's not that your partner isn't just going to be perfect, but they're not going to be exactly the same. I think that's the other important point for all of us to consider. And when you think of it from a physical standpoint, that part's obvious. We all age, so you're not even with the same physical body partner, right? We all have this progression of aging. But even more in the realm of personality, personality, those 5 main traits, they're not even completely fixed, right? As we go through our individual lives, our personality traits themselves kind of go up and down a little bit. But even more so as we get into it today, just what your partner needs, what you need, how you see the world, all the life experiences you go through, it changes your value system, it changes your dreams, the things you want to shoot for. So all of that is a part of the person that you are. So yes, there's some consistency. You want a partner that is consistent and reliable, but we also have to allow for this place where, yes, they evolve too. And they evolve from the psychological standpoint and from just the things they desire, they want to do in their life. And so do you, obviously. So those are the things we really want to consider as we go into this, because all of that put together means that your marriage is going to evolve. And then it's really about you adapting to keep up with that evolution. Again, whether it's because you went through certain things or you become parents or people leave your life, they come into your life, maybe you go up or down in finances and that allows you to dream a little bit different. Like there's so many different things that can happen that change your outlook, your worldview, your desires, and you have to keep up with that, right? So if your marriage is evolving and you don't understand that you're evolving or that your partner is, all of a sudden your marriage will feel harder and your satisfaction will decline. And this is where the self-development or the self-growth part is required so that you keep up with this evolution of your marriage. Now, if you don't do that, what is the other option? It's just as if you're going to root yourself. Think of an ocean, right? And the ocean is going to have waves and storms, and the wind's going to blow, and there's going to be all kinds of sort of chaos. And you're saying, I'm not going to move. Then you're going to feel more resistance, the wind, the waves. But if you allow yourself to be more adaptable, more flexible, and you went with it, then you can get out of the storm, let's say. That was my quick analogy. So in terms of your marriage, if you root yourself, though, and act as if you're not going to change, or that your marriage isn't changing, or that your partner isn't changing, you're just going to automatically point the finger at your partner as if they're the reason for the decline in your satisfaction, whether in your interactions in your marriage or why you're not pursuing what you want to pursue. And you have to really understand that that's probably the source of your frustration. And the culprit is really your own resistance to understand this truth, that it's about your own development. And we'll talk a little bit about parts of your heart and your mind that need to evolve as you yourself actually do, your partner does, and the marriage does.
You have to remember this. Everywhere you go, there you are. And I know some of you even maybe smiled as you heard that, but isn't that true? If you did say, you know what, this is hard, and I blame you, partner, for our problems, and I'm out, the next relationship that you go to, there you are. There are your patterns. And so we know you're obviously listening to this episode because that's not what you're committed to, going to just another partnership. But every interaction that you get into with your partner, you are there. So therefore, this is the question that you need to ask yourself first when frustrations come up, when a challenging pattern, cycle that is persisting. Maybe you're going through a season where you're arguing more and you don't understand why it's becoming like this, or you're really disconnected. So whatever's going on, you ask yourself this first. How am I contributing to this? Not causing it, not that you're to blame. The word is contributing. And the truth is, you are contributing somehow. We have yet to have a session with a couple, and we have worked with a lot of couples around the world for almost a decade now, where it was all on one person. That's just not a thing usually, because you have to understand social psychology. And that is that you are always influencing each other. You are influencing the way your partner sees you, sees the relationship, how they feel in that interaction, how they are perceiving the interaction, how they feel in the relationship as a whole in this season. You're influencing it. Again, not causing it. You have to get rid of that mindset. That is actually what just keeps you in a state of avoiding blame. We're talking about influence. And if both of you start to reframe the perspective that you have in these hard moments to say, all right, I am contributing somehow. I'm going to focus on discovering what that is, how I'm influencing my partner to feel triggered in this interaction, how I'm influencing them to feel emotionally invalidated or unsafe or unheard. That will get you a long way. And we're going to unpack this and list this out in more specific steps. So for those of you who are note takers, feel free to write it down. Or if you're just listening to this on the go, we want you to at least take one or two of the steps that we outline and do something with it. Do not let this just be a quick motivational moment and you forget it. It's really about implementation. Now, as we go into these, we do want to say that it's going to hit on some key points for you guys. And you're going to want to say, wow, I need to talk more about that one. Can I talk to the Freemans? Can we talk about our triggers? Can we talk about conflict? And the truth is, you guys, we can't meet with everyone. We have a very long wait list right now to work with us. And that's why we try to make all of these other resources that are accessible that you can get right now, so you don't have to wait to get a lot of our tools and frameworks and skills. So we are actually temporarily reopening the replay for the marriage web class that we hosted last month with 8,000 plus couples that were registered. So this is actually a free event. This is very rare that we host a free online event. About once a year, we do this. So you're going to want to go to onlinecouplesworkshops.com, watch that replay. It is going to give you so many ahas. The visuals that we put in there around the conflict cycle, around triggers, around communication patterns that you get into are very, very helpful. And then you'll also notice right after you register for that free marriage web class, there will be an option to get a bundled deal for 3 of our most popular guides. This is very rarely available. Like, you couldn't go to our website and find this bundle all the time. This is really something we only open up from time to time, a couple times a year maybe. So you will see that right after you register. We do recommend that because, again, these are playbooks. This is about implementation to create real change in your partnership. So with that, Erin, start to take us through these important steps to change the patterns that we each play out in the relationship.
Well, the first one to start with is being self-aware of your triggered emotions. When we do this with couples on sessions, we often talk about it's a core fear. When we talk about the conflict cycle, this is just the best way to start because it's the most obvious. It's the place that your body is telling you there's something happening here, right? Because you usually have higher emotion. So the first part of this is obviously that, and we won't say this every step, but you can't start with pointing the finger at your partner and blaming them that, hey, when you do this and it's causing me to feel this way. It doesn't mean that you eventually don't get to communicate and make some requests for changes of behavior for them as well, but this is just where we have to start, right? This is the whole point of this podcast. You need to start looking at, where am I getting emotionally triggered? This is before we talk about any particular action. It's where in our interactions, in our days, in which situations am I having this triggered emotion come up? And, what is that emotion? Is it unloved? Is it disrespected? Is it controlled, misunderstood, misperceived? So there's this core fear that gets emotionally triggered within you. And so you can ask yourself questions to try to understand it. What am I really feeling in these moments? If you have to go beneath and say, well, okay, yeah, I feel frustrated, but maybe it's really anger. So there's maybe different levels, but you want to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Again, some other examples being unheard, not good enough. Also, then, where have I felt this before? And what you're trying to do is not pick out multiple situations where this shows up in your marriage, but it might give you a sense of, well, where else have I felt this? Oh, well, actually, funny enough, it comes up at work or a friend or with my parents, or this is from, years ago. I actually kind of felt a similar feeling when I was a kid, or, playing baseball and sports early. So you want to start to look, and what you'll notice is there might be a theme that, oh, wow, this isn't really just, number one, because my partner's making me feel this way. Number two, it's not just with my partner. Oh, wow, there's actually a theme of feeling not good enough. So this gives you more of a sense that it is really something about you. Because like you said, wherever you go, there you are. And what that means in part is where this emotional trigger, this wound, this core fear, you're bringing it with you. And then what outcome do I usually create when I feel this? So now you start to look, oh man, you know what? I can see multiple scenarios. I can see from years ago. And yeah, I tend to really shut down and withdraw myself, or I tend to be more reactive and I blame. I'm more, verbal with my anger. So you want to start to put all that together and just see like, oh, wow, I can really see that pattern within myself.
The key to what Erin just outlined, right, is that you really look within and see what blocks you two being able to communicate. Because these triggers, they hijack us, all of us, because we've all had moments of feeling triggered. They hijack us from being in the present moment and being able to hear our partner and be able to get to understanding and resolution. And we know that that's one of the most frustrating dynamics to experience is how can we be trying to talk about something that every couple should be able to discuss and we just can't get there? We get too upset at each other and now it spirals. Now it's a conflict. We should be able to talk about this. And we know that's frustrating because ultimately, the better you get at communication and recognizing your triggers, you will be able to stay in a regulated state and be able to discuss it. And so you have to think, what are those moments within our partnership where it goes from being just a neutral conversation to I am feeling something. And rather than pointing the finger at them, because that's the trap, you don't have any control over them. And so if you want freedom from this cycle, from this pattern, both of you have to go, what about what my partner is saying is triggering me? They are telling me something, they're just telling me their need, or they're telling me how something hurt them or affected them. And now I am making it mean I can never get it right and it's never good enough. Maybe I have a wound around not being good enough. And you know what? That kind of reminds me of being a kid, and I felt as though I just never got it right. I never got the love from one of my parents that I craved, and it was constantly about me performing and having to do better, and I got love when I was doing good in school or sports. That's just an example of really taking it deeper and asking yourself, what is this really striking? Because if I keep getting stuck at what my partner is saying or how this conversation is going, or whenever we talk about our kids, I get really defensive and I can't hear my partner's feedback, it's poking something within you that you need to acknowledge.
So this is the first one. And, if you journal, we suggest you do something where you give yourself the time and the space to really contemplate this first point, which there's a lot to it, but self-awareness of the emotional trigger. Now, the second one comes immediately after. So once you go through that step, it's interrupting the triggered behavior. So you'll start to see that as we give you those 3 questions. But once you identify the emotion, then you ask that question, well, how do I usually react? That's the second part. So the more awareness you can bring to it in your contemplation, then we kind of move this to a more practical step, which is when the emotion shows up in your body and in your actual life, you have to make the choice to interrupt the automatic reaction. We call this the triggered behavior. So whether that's shutting down, getting defensive, just holding things in, but then being resentful, stonewalling potentially, or you are bring up the past, you blame your partner, maybe you yell, call names, or I see Jocelyn added this one. This is the one I do sometimes. You then coach or get righteous. Right? I can tend to say, Jocelyn, we teach this every day. You're not doing this right.
And that does not go well. I'm not receiving that very well.
So we'll leave that at that because those really go hand in hand. When people say I'm triggered, well, there's the triggered emotion and the behavior. So identifying both of those, then you just have to take the step to interrupt the behavior part. Now, it opens up a gap. It's like, well, then step 3, more obvious, you have to choose a different action. Now, when we say choose a different action, so long as you're interrupting the normal reaction, that's a good step, but taking an action that's going to be more effective. So we don't just mean, well, if I yell, then I'm just not going to say anything and withdraw, right? That's still a part of a reaction because you're not communicating anything at all with your partner. So whether it is saying, hey, I'm verbally saying this, so it can be in quotes. Hey, partner, I feel, I'm feeling something coming up for me and I need time to process. So I just like to take a pause from this, right? And The issue most people have with pause is that it then stops the conversation and then you never come back to it. So just know when we say you request a pause, that means you actually take time to consider the other things we've already talked about, and then you reinitiate the conversation at a designated time. So that's if you're working on your own regulation and things could escalate, ask for the pause. You could actually ask for a pause and still stay in the conversation and take a couple of breaths, and then you can say, well, let's redirect the conversation. Maybe that's one positive action you could take. Or primarily just summing both of these points up, the self-awareness and the changing of the pattern is really about this. You have to begin to act from your commitment, not your impulse.
I would want you to say more on that, but really quick, I wanted to say a little bit more about choosing a different action because you listed some great ones. I think a really practical thing to do is to ask clarifying questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're getting triggered, we're jumping to conclusions, we're making assumptions, we're hearing things that aren't actually said. That's why so many coaches and therapists will have you practice mirroring, which is when you repeat back what you're hearing your partner say. The reason why is because people are often hearing things that aren't being said or they're interpreting it. It's like one phrase was actually now made to be saying something completely different. That's your brain interpreting it through the filter of your trigger. And so it's all right, you know what? I'm going to slow down and I'm going to focus on my breaths and I'm going to say, hey, I don't want to misinterpret what you're saying. So can you clarify what you mean when you say blank? Something like that, where you're slowing down time. In a sense, you're buying yourself time to process what they're saying and slowing down the conversation and making sure you're not misinterpreting things. You could also say, hey, when I hear you say, fill in the blank with what your partner's saying, for me, it brings up this trigger of like feeling misunderstood. But I feel as though I'm misinterpreting. So can you like restate that another way? So there's many different ways you can say it. There's no perfect way. You're asking a clarifying question. So you're not jumping to conclusions. And what happens a lot of times too is people will get hooked on one word or one phrase and be like, I'm missing the bigger point actually of what you're saying. I got hooked on that one word you said because I remember it differently. Can you clarify what you're wanting me to understand?
Yeah, it reminds me of you've been liking listening to Jefferson Fisher, and when you ask questions, you have to actually be genuine in the answer. I see some people take that and they ask a question, but as I listen to that, I'm like, you're not actually asking a question you want to answer to. It's like, it's just, I'm not even
It's like
sure the way to say it.
condescending.
Yeah, it's definitely condescending. It's clear that you already have made up your mind about what it means. And so just because you formed it in a question, it's like, well.
You have to be coming from the right place.
Yeah. So again, Jefferson Fisher, one of the questions he had was, did you mean for that to sound fill in the blank? So did you mean for that to sound disrespectful? And you're not now saying you just disrespected me and you already know the answer. It is a way to diffuse the situation. And as he puts it, most people will respond with, oh, no, I didn't mean for it to be disrespectful. I was just trying to share myself. So if I'm genuine, oh, okay. And then to your point, is there a different way you could say that then? So that's just a good way to diffuse. And I'll come back to the point I made. This self-awareness part, when we talk about triggers, emotion, and behavior, again, it comes down to this. You have to commit yourself. The personal work, the personal growth, we're not even to what your partner can really do different yet. You have to start to choose that I came into this marriage with these certain triggers, emotional and behavioral. And I've formed some other ones from the length of time we've been together, from the circumstances that we've been facing, some of our interactions. But what I'll do in this growth journey is I can feel certain things. We're not saying you automatically heal feeling controlled or disrespected. That's not what we're saying. But you can stop the pattern. And you have to then decide that I am going to act from my commitment, which might be a commitment of respect, of harmony, of understanding, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the impulse. So that means I can still be feeling disrespected. I can be feeling misunderstood, but I'm not just going to impulsively react like I normally would. I can be with that emotion and choose to take one of these steps that we've outlined.
Yeah. Can I go into the next one
Yeah.
here? Okay. So even if you did just those, you would get very far in navigating your conversations and conflicts differently as a couple. But we've got even more here. So the next one is to commit to unraveling or healing the source of the emotion. Now, this is the deeper work, right? It's okay, I have awareness that I have this trigger around how you speak to me. So this is one for me that I discovered really early on in our relationship is there's certain facial expressions and a tone that Aaron has
This is a funny one.
that I perceive as feeling as though I'm getting punished. And it reminds me of being punished by one of my parents. That is what I feel in my body. It is so rapid, and I feel the emotions come up quickly. Now, I have enough awareness that I don't immediately act from it because of all the things that we described, right? So I notice the sensations in my body. I notice the impulse to then react to that experience, and then I already know how that would go. And I choose a different action instead. And that is to do all the things that we already outlined. But the deeper healing is not just a one and done experience. I think that you see a lot of people talking about content online, and they will talk a lot about, healing, doing the inner child healing, go do EMDR therapy, go do breath work. And I think some people can almost sell it as if there's a destination where you are healed. And I think that that's almost an illusion. It's not impossible, but we've been doing this work for over a decade now, self-development work and marriage work. And I'll be honest, I still feel that sensation many times in my body when I perceive Aaron with his face, with his tone of voice.
With my face.
Because it's a facial expression, right? And that's not where he's coming from. That's the thing to get. Where he's at when he's speaking to me is not from a place of trying to punish me. He's having a totally different experience of why, he's not feeling heard. So he's, trying to speak up for himself. So anyway, it goes back to, I can't keep making it like, well, don't look at me that way. So I've had to, over this decade, dig deeper and work at some of those wounds with one of my parents and be able to, I've done various forms. I've done EMDR therapy. I have done breath work. And they're all tools to help the nervous system not feel so reactive. But I've not had an expectation, again, that I reach this totally healed place. I believe we're all healing together.
And to give you credit, I think what I've seen you spend the most time on is also contemplating, reading, and meditating.
True.
Right. So that's been such a huge part for you. So it's not our point here to go into all the ways to heal these sources of emotion. But that's good for now. And we'll move to the next one then, because how you know you're really doing that well is that you start to live life. Really pick which word resonates with you. It's either more detached, more peaceful, more harmonious, more enthusiastic, more baseline joyful, right? So it really does change your spirit and your kind of default emotional environment. That's how you know you're really healing those sources. So now we kind of move into a different kind of segment of the development. Now it becomes a little more, at least this one is future focused, right? I need to become now more self-aware, not of the triggers and my behaviors and where that comes from, but based on the season that I'm in, what are my emotional and practical needs? And it is very present to future focused, right? If your child is an infant, if your child is 3 like ours, if you have a teenager, if you've made some big life adjustments, if you've moved, if you came into more finances or the opposite, it's been a harder season for you. you really want to now look at and become self-aware of what do I really need and what do I need from my partner. So again, could be emotional, could be practical. And this is where you start to get into more proactive communication, which is, of course, the first category we go into in that web class. Like, what does preventing conflict actually look like? It's your proactive, assertive communication. Well, about what? Primarily about, hey, what are the needs that you have in this season and going forward? And just making those requests of your partner.
Because when you aren't expressing your needs, then other situations and things that come up between your partner will, in a sense, like create more traps to feel triggered. Like they're very interconnected. That's what we notice is like when couples are not proactively communicating, they're not expressive of their needs, other things are now becoming triggers. It's like your partner just brings up, hey babe, I need you to this week. And it's making you feel as though you're never, doing enough and you're not feeling acknowledged. It's like, okay, but have you acknowledged or said out loud that you feel overwhelmed and, need to experience some more appreciation being vocalized by your partner? You haven't. So again, that is the first section of the web class. So to Aaron's point, I think that is another reason to really watch it so that you can gain more of those proactive communication tools.
So let's transition to this next one. And, for me, it's not quite sequential or linear, but it is kind of how I've seen my own personal development journey. So the better I'm doing that, right, you can feel this environment of peace, of harmony, of joy, of understanding, of sharing with each other, of follow through, of integrity, of those needs now getting met. And when that happens, you feel more cared for, more prioritized. So you move into this more harmonious place. Now the place I think of the self-awareness can go is, well, things are still going to happen, right? And we say that on the web class. So you got tension arises, things still happen. We need to allow for that. We're all still human. We still have things. And you do take some of these steps that might be old patterns. And so you do a little bit more damage. And sometimes it's not intentional. Sometimes you have a good intent, but the way you went about it, your action had an unintended negative impact on your partner, and you may not have realized it. You can't get upset at those either. So the self-awareness in this step is about, where do I have blocks around initiating repair with my partner simply because they say they need it? And so we won't go into our repair process. Our repair process is also very largely dependent on your ability to take responsibility.
And also in the web class. So that's why we're not going to go into it right now because it's on the web class.
So do I have any block from even proactively going to you and say, hey, from this past week, is there anything that you felt didn't get repaired? And if I'm going to say something like that, which I should ongoing, like proactively do that every once in a while, and you say, yeah, you know what, there was something. It's like, well, I now can't get defensive or mad. Okay, there was something. So am I willing to hear it? And am I willing to take responsibility? And I don't want to spend too much time, but because it's not like always directly responsible. There are root causes of some of these. It might be that you broaden your perspective and say, oh, you know what I'm hearing you say is, it might not even been so much about how I said it, but I know I didn't give you as many love account deposits this week. And I was really more focused on my work. And I could see how that ended up having you feel disconnected and maybe not like a priority. So that may or may not have been what your partner actually said they needed repaired from. But if I'm really listening, then I can take responsibility for the environment I helped to create. And so, again, the point here is, are you willing to have the self-awareness to initiate repair and hear how you have intentionally or unintentionally impacted your partner and take responsibility? And now start to have each other feel repaired by these small things that happen. Now you put that together with all the steps we've talked about, you're really creating some wonderful momentum where almost anything can happen in your life, external or internal to your relationship, and you just know you can handle it. And then things hit you like, well, we're just on the same team. And you just really stop turning against each other.
I got to say something bold. I don't know that I've said this on the podcast before. The reason that repair is so important is because the longer that you're together, love and respect are so intertwined. And what I mean by that is that it is hard to continue to feel love towards someone that we can't respect. And we can't respect someone who never takes responsibility or never initiates repair.
Mm.
Get that. I know that's a bold thing to acknowledge and accept, but love and respect are interconnected. And how could you expect your partner to respect you if you never take responsibility? Or they have to fight with you to get an apology because you impacted them. That's draining. And it's hard to respect a person like that. So please use this as motivation to be like, wow, I need to get better at repair. So I'm going to master the Freeman's skills for that. We have an entire step process for repair. Get that in the web class. It's also in our guides because it's a skill you just must have to maintain that love and respect for each other.
So let's transition to the last point here, and I'll let you wrap on this one more. So I'll just start it. It's really a part of the aspirational goal of self-awareness. We want to give everything to you. It's now just start to consider what negative perceptions have formed that I didn't realize that I see my partner through.
So perception. What that means is there's a certain way that you are seeing your partner, and a series of interactions that occur, both positive interactions, but certainly as negative ones stack up, and there's things that you don't repair or talk through, or your love account is low, you haven't been connecting, you now start to see your partner in a negative light. It's like the brain is constantly filtering for the positive or the negative. And we need to be aware of that and ask yourself, you kind of step outside the situation and be like, man, if I've been more reactive to my partner, if I've been sharper with them, if my tone has not been as patient, why? How have I been perceiving them? Have I been perceiving them in a negative light? Is my brain filtering and looking for all the things that bug me, or I wish they would do it this way, or the things they aren't doing rather than what they are doing or the great things about them? And so there are times in the relationship where we need to say, you know what, brain? I want you to start to look for the good in my partner. I want to really focus on all the things they are doing, and I want to make sure I'm expressing more gratitude, more appreciation. I'm speaking to their greatness rather than their weakness. That's a sneak preview from one of the topics. We were just on Ed Milet's podcast. If any of you know that, that'll come out in June. And that was one of the points we got to, was how the longer we're together, we can forget to speak to each other's greatness, and we start to speak to their weaknesses. We start pointing it out more. We start being more critical. We start focusing on the things they didn't get done rather than everything they did get done. So you have to look at, how is my brain filtering everything about my partner? Is it leaning negative or positive? And if it is leaning negative, then I need to redirect my focus and speak more into their greatness and focus on that, because that perception, it drives your attitude, it drives your actions, and ultimately then they're going to respond to that. So it's really just a deeper psychological principle for you to understand. Now, we know we've given you a lot here. This is a lot to process. So really just want to end with a final note about inviting your partner into growth. And that is written very deliberately. Inviting your partner into growth, not forcing them, not telling them ultimatums and, this is all the stuff you have to fix. It's, hey, babe, I want to grow with you. I think there are things we both can work on and do better. Let's listen to this episode together. Let's both listen for the things we each see we can do differently, because ultimately, I want us to create just the most healthy and productive interactions that we can. I want to understand you better. I want us to understand each other better. So that's just a version of an invitation to grow. You're not trying to fix each other. You're not, again, pointing out like you're terrible, so this is why you have to work on yourself. It's, I want to grow closer, and I want to grow to become better versions of ourselves. I'd love for you to be on that journey with me. And That's why we need an outside influence too, because you don't want to be each other's coach. That's the last thing you want, is to feel as though you're coaching each other. You want to be romantic partners. That's why you want to let us do the coaching. Let us give that real talk and that honest talk through the podcast, also through the marriage web class and the guides. Let us be the coaches for both of you so that you feel like you're on the same team as you grow together. So we really hope that this episode was valuable. Make sure that you focus on implementation from this, not just getting motivated for a little bit. So if you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can hear past and future episodes. And if you've been listening for at least one episode, it would help so much if you would give us a 5-star rating on whichever platform you're listening on. That helps us so much. And again, take advantage of that marriage web class that we temporarily reopened, the replay, which again, we have historically done just once a year. So go to onlinecouplesworkshops.com. And then you'll see the option to do the bundled deal for 3 of our popular guides on communication, on de-escalating conflicts, and repair. Those are going to be very helpful for walking through the web class, but then also to use afterwards. So with that, you guys, we hope this was really valuable for you, and we will talk to you on the next episode.